Coogs House, the Houston Cougars get to play basketball today. But should they?
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way, the latest on Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. Appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. And if you found us on YouTube, welcome back. It is so good to see you again here each and every day at Locked On Cougs. Remember to subscribe. We're going to give away every 500 subscribers. Next one of those is at 2,500. We're going to be doing a giveaway to someone who's liking and commenting. So make sure you like and comment on the video. Let's know that you're in that contest. We get there. We're at about 2,100 right now. If you don't know what to say after a very basketball-heavy episode, speaking of someone hypotheticals about basketball at that, tell us in the comments down below. We've been doing chips all week because it's championship week. We're trying to go get the chip, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Tell us down below what you think about fish and chips. All right, I admit that's a bit of a stretch, but you got me. All right, so got a couple things to talk about today. Again, hypothetical about the Big 12 Conference Tournament, because we haven't really talked about it yet. And it's a very different conference tournament for a number of reasons than the American Athletic Conference Tournament was. And so in today's episode that's brought to you by Nissan, more on that soon, I want to talk first about what is the big deal with playing in this tournament, and is it actually a big deal if things go south? It might not be as bad as you think. Second, I want to talk some about the expanded rotation I would like to see and why. It'll make sense if you give me a second, I promise. And third, and finally, I'll talk about more things coming number one's way. Mas por uno. But in the first segment, let's talk about what the big deal is with the Big 12 tournament. The Big 12 is the best conference in college basketball. I could pull up a bunch of numbers and stats. I don't think I have to convince you about that if you've made it this far. It is the deepest. Brett Yormark said just a couple days ago at this point that he thinks that there'll be at least 9 teams from the conference in the NCAA tournament. It's got, the 2022 champion, the 2021 champion. There was no 2020, the 2019 runner-up. Houston made a Final Four in there as well. Houston's now in the Big 12. Houston's been the number one team for a stretch of last season. A stretch of this season is in the Big 12. BYU, it's got like 6 teams in the top 25 the last AP poll, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Houston is in the Big 12 tournament. Houston has a shortened roster after some season-ending injuries in the rotation, not with the starters, but in the rotation, including some other guys that are banged up and in the starting lineup. And frankly, Houston has to play Thursday and Friday and Saturday to win this thing, to win all 3 games. Obviously, they got kind of a 2-round bye, really a 1-round bye in the conference tournament. And a lot of people are wondering, why does Houston have to do all this? How has Houston not locked up on number 1 seed already? Could they really fall past 4 from the number 1 seed in the AP poll? Could they really, in the number 1 in the net ranking, could they really fall past 4 if they didn't win the conference tournament? And if they're in the top 4, then don't they get to kind of pick their path to get a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament? And that's probably true, right? But I did a little research, a little bit of math, and I did think it's worth pointing out that it's 2024, so since 1994, there have been 13 teams that won March Madness after winning their conference tournaments. Okay. Now, one of those 13 teams was the 2013 Louisville team that was vacated, but I counted it for the purposes of this exercise, right? Because on the floor, they did their thing, right? Now, of that 29, and again, it's 29 because there was no tournament in 2020, 13 out of 29 is less than half, right? Less than half. It's almost half, but less than half the teams that have won the whole thing won their conference tournament. And I would point out that actually, in looking at this year by year, the bulk of those from the front half of that sample size since 2011, right? And the one and done thing has kind of been a whole different ball game since 2011. You're seeing a lot. College basketball looks a lot different the last couple years, let alone the last 13 years. But since 2011, 8 of the 11 champions have not won their conference tournament. And I thought it was even interesting that the 3 that have, one of them is that 2013 Louisville team. Okay, we're counting them, but it was vacated, so you could easily say that you're not. The 2018 NCAA champion was Villanova. They won at the buzzer. Okay, if you remember, seconds before they hit that shot, Carolina thought they'd hit a buzzer beater that would have won them the NCAA tournament. Carolina was not conference champion that year, so that could have easily, it was seconds away from being the inverse, right? As far as the statistics in this go. And then 2022, Kansas didn't win the Big 12, and that feels pertinent because it's the same exact conference, but they beat an 8 seed UNC by a single basket in the final. And you're looking at essentially a vacated title and a couple of single baskets that have kept it from potentially having been, honestly, the complete inverse and having a complete 180, having no teams having won the conference tournament and the NCAA tournament in the same year since 2011, UConn. Now, for what it's worth, in the exact same 30-year window, going back to 1994, no team has won it all if they didn't make it to at least the semifinals of their conference tournament. Because of that those buys, plural, that Houston earned, their first game is officially the quarterfinal. So to keep that trend up, if they wanted to win the NCAA tournament, they would, by the trend, need to also win at least on Thursday and get into the semifinal round of the conference tournament, just to like check that box as far as like being even keel with everybody. I think it's interesting though that there's a lot of weight on this, because as I'm wearing a Big 12 championship t-shirt right now, Houston has been the much more difficult champion of the Big 12. The regular season is a much more challenging and much more holistic way to look at who the best team in the conference is. You look at an entire body of work over a couple of months, right? You have actual game planning and strategizing. You're theoretically a lot more fresh, because even if you're playing 2 games in 3 days, it's a whole lot different than playing 3 in a row, right? You just have a different feel. And if you can win the regular season, as again, Houston did, I feel like that points to a better basketball team than if you got hot for 3 days, had healthy guys for 3 days, didn't get fouled over 3 days, right? But I digress. We talked about ad nauseum, like in Monday's episode, we talked about how Houston like didn't just win the conference, they ran away with it, right? And so maybe I'm a little bit biased there. Houston probably does need to win their quarterfinal matchup on Thursday to officially make sure they're within the trend here. I don't know, though, outside of playing a game or two to keep themselves fresh, how much value this tournament has. Again, as long as Houston doesn't drop precipitously, and a single loss this week in a conference tournament wouldn't be that, they probably still get a 1 seed, right? I mean, be kind of crazy for something else to happen there. They get a 1 seed. They get to play in the South region. Theoretically, they go through Dallas in that case. I'd imagine, I guess there's some way that a West could pop up, but probably through Dallas, which is close to home what they're going to get. All of those things, I mean, do they need to win the Big 12 to guarantee that? Absolutely not. They need to stay sharp, play a little bit of basketball this week? Yes. But I think health, rest, relaxation may actually lead to, as we're seeing since 2011, may actually lead to deeper tournament runs. And I think that's in large part because the gauntlet of college basketball, I mean, playing big time games on Saturdays and Mondays, has gotten more challenging on the body. And while it feels like preparation for the NCAA tournament, and there's an argument that Big 12 play absolutely does that. That's why the teams do so well, right? You play Baylor on Saturday, Kansas on Monday. That is like a Sweet 16 Elite 8 game a day apart, right? I get that. But it also means that by this point in the year, your body's tired, right? I know these are college kids, but they play a lot of hard basketball minutes at this point. And not having to play a third game in 3 days this week might not be the worst thing for the Houston Cougars. Now, I say that to say that I could see Houston playing extended rotations, and I'll talk about that in a second, that don't take their foot off the gas from an effort standpoint. You'll never see a Kelvin Sampson team lack effort. You'll never see a Kelvin Sampson team lack hustle, right? There's not that you're coaching them to lose, but you're going to play rotations that may put you in a bind, in my head, to rest guys, knowing that you have a bigger prize very, very soon. I mean, after all, I'm seriously going, like, my memories are popping up on my phone or whatever, like they do on everyone's phone. And we remember that this time a year ago, Marcus Sasser went down with a groin injury in the first round of the American Athletic Conference tournament that made the whole thing seem moot, right? If you don't, we'll talk about that in a second segment, talk about expanding the rotations and why. But first, we got to talk about something called adventure. We got to talk about exploring, and we've got to talk about Nissan, because if you are the kind of driver that likes to push things a little bit further, you ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Friends at Nissan have a line of SUVs that can help with all of those different kinds of adventures and help with the capabilities to take that adventure to the next level. Like the Nissan Rogue, 2024 Rogue is perfect for both the city drives, I'm a city guy myself, or those great escapes. It's got class exclusive Google built-ins to always keep updating Assistant, calling on you for almost anything. Gone are the days connecting your phone. Forget your phone at home, no service, no whatever. Does not matter, because Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store are all built into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen, and they're calling it the infotainment, information entertainment system in your vehicle. 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Take the Nissan Rogue, Pathfinder, or Armada and go find your next big adventure today. Shop NissanUSA.com. So this time a year ago, right, we're going to go play in the American Athletic Conference tournament in Fort Worth. Number one team in America. Houston's killing it all year. Not a super deep team, right? Not by injuries in that instance, but Houston just had a couple freshmen, and it was like the 5 stars and Reggie Chaney. Rest in peace, Reggie Chaney. So you've got essentially going to the tournament. You're like, okay, we're going to try and get a big lead in all these games, and then let our backups play. And if we got to play Memphis, the championship game, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But American Athletic Conference is typically a 1-bid, maybe 2-bid league, right? And so you kind of felt like you needed to win that to cement what was happening, right? Not the Big 12 by any stretch. And then Marcus Sasser pulls a groin crossing over on a wet spot on the floor, right? And suddenly everyone sees the light flashes before your eyes. You look at it and you say, oh my God, what's it going to be like? They almost, right? He goes down again in the NCAA tournament, and they kind of frankly had a shortened run with a bunch of guys banged up. There's Sasser in his groin, but you also had Jamal Shead in his knees in the NCAA tournament. There was something about a back with a big man and all kinds of stuff happening. And you got your season shortened in the Sweet 16, when on a pure talent perspective, in a world where the injuries are turned off like a video game, that team should win the whole thing. I understand that's not the case that it was, and that they don't play in a video game, injuries are not turned off, and that depth was a problem, right? Bunch of freshmen that are now sophomores will be juniors next year, et cetera, right? But at the end of the day, injuries held that team back, right? Injuries came from playing hard in times which you don't maybe didn't need to, right? And this year, you're going to the Big 12 tournament, and there's no doubt that, again, there'll be like 9 or more teams from the Big 12 in March Madness. And I'm not saying anyone on the floor needs to not play to win. That would be ridiculous. I'm not advocating that. But what I am saying is that why not play Ryan Elvin 10 minutes, 12 minutes? Kind of evenly spread out the wear and tear on people's bodies in these games, right? Let's play Ryan Elvin 12 minutes. Let's play Sedlot his 20. Let's get Damian Dunn 25, Malik Wilson 25, right? Let the minutes fall where they may after that. Let's say Jamal Shead doesn't have to play 38. Let's play him for 30 and see what happens, right? Those kinds of things in this tournament do not guarantee by any stretch you're going to lose. Those guys are talented. Ryan Elvin was one of the best shooters in America. I know he played for the number 1 team in America, so he'll get a whole lot of minutes. But if he played for like the number 12 team in America, I'm saying right now he'd get real rotational kind of stuff. And he played in the American Athletic Conference for a non-Houston team. I'm saying he might start. He's really talented. Okay. Houston just got a really talented roster. And if you play those guys instead, right? Play guys that don't get a lot of your minutes in your typical rotation. I think you find out a couple of things. One, you hopefully rest the J1 Roberts of the world. That way, like he's been getting his knees drained every, his knee singular drained every 2 weeks for like the last 3 months, 4 months. Give him a blow. He got stitches in his hand. Give him a blow. Jamal Shead, those same knees that we saw wear down last year, give those knees a blow. Right? Javier Francis fell on his hip, fell on his back. Let's stay off it for a second. Right? Let's let those kinds of things work themselves out. Plus, you're going to need Said Lot at some point in the NCAA tournament. You're going to need Damian Dunn at some point in the NCAA tournament. You're going to need Malik Wilson at some point in the NCAA tournament. Each of those guys needs to be comfortable playing extended minutes, because if it's the Sweet 16 and you're playing, I don't know, insert 7-footer here, and Javier Francis is in foul trouble, they've got a true power forward, so J1's got to be out. You're going to need to play Said Lot. You're going to have to do it. And I understand that he's playing incredibly valuable minutes at practice. We saw what he did to Hunter Dickinson. I shouldn't say it like that. We saw how he played with Hunter Dickinson before Hunter Dickinson's injury, unfortunately, right? He played fine, and I predicted that he'd be good, right? I feel like it's worth pointing out that Said can continue to develop in these games, in game action. I'm not saying treat them like exhibitions. The guys on the floor should try to win, but playing rotations where like Damian is out there and Malik is out there, and let Emmanuel he's got the freshest legs of the group. Let him bring up the ball with Malik, Damian, Elvin, Said, and whomever, right? Like let them figure that out some, because you don't know in a week which of those guys you're going to have to play with no alternative, right? You're not going to get Tugler back. You're not going to get Ramon back. You're not going to get Terrence back. Those guys are lost for the season. And so if you can figure out guys' roles, kind of pump guys up this week while resting other guys, even if it's guys like Said and Ryan, who have been bench guys to this point, I think in the long run, you actually help yourself out. You actually figure out that, hey, we figured out a set that we run that gets Damian to his spots. It works. That way, when you're playing that Sweet 16 game and you need someone to do that Tremont Mark takeover that he did last year against Auburn, so, Emmanuel's in foul trouble, Crier's getting double teamed, throw it to Damian, right? Like, we got a set that we can get him open with, right? Again, I mentioned the big guys and the Said Lot thing. I think that finding those ways to get them in is going to be important. I also think it's worth pointing out that, and I'm recording this before the game's over, but Oklahoma and TCU are both games in which you saw major minutes out of Damian Dunn and Malik Wilson. Houston went small in those games. I think in a bench-ish lineup, you could get away with being small this time around as well because of the length and quickness and explosiveness of Wilson and the sturdiness and strength of Dunn. I think kind of get away with them playing the small ball 4 against either Oklahoma or TCU. And so I don't think they're going to be like outmanned if you play bench units for stretches of these games. And again, you're still trying to win with the guys on the floor. I'm just saying, give minute restrictions to the guys that you're going to need in a week, because you're already so banged up, so depleted, and so injured that you'd hate for that to be the story of another March. Now, there is no guarantee. I can already hear the naysayers right now, right? There is no guarantee that if you play Jamal Shead for 0 minutes, the Big 12 tournament, 0 minutes, he could go out there, knock on wood, and something awful could happen. Sports will sports, right? I get that. But I feel like there is some science to this, and you've got to give yourself the best chance possible. And I just feel like this is a tournament, especially when you've done what Houston's done in the regular season as they did it. You've earned the right to do this almost. You've earned the right to test out in rotations, see what guys can do, play with things a little bit. You've earned that right by playing so hard and so well throughout the entire season and competing with the best of the best all year long, right? I feel like if you've earned it and you don't do it, it's like almost why'd you earn it in the first place? Now they're smarter coaches than me. They get paid a lot of money to do this. I'm sure they got rhyme and reason to the decisions they make, and I'm sure, frankly, that they would point a bunch of holes, poke a bunch of holes, point out a bunch of flaws, or poke a bunch of holes in what I'm having to say. If you feel the same way, you can tell me in the comments down below. But before we wrap up, I do have a third segment to talk some about something else going on and some accolades heading number one's way. But first, as we talk about number one, we got to talk about the number one thing to be watching this March. Obviously, it's March Madness. And what are you going to watch it on? Let me recommend Fire TV because Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights and in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs as well as the Fire Stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or a college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Now, Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. It includes the Big 12. Yes, that includes the Big 12. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more. Keep updated on the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, the NBA, MLB, and more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFire TV. All right, so as we're watching Jamal Shead take home basically every award the Big 12 could have offered him, although I saw an interesting argument that actually everyone in Houston should have qualified for Newcomer of the Year because it was a new team in the conference. And actually, it's hard to believe that Jamal Shead could win Defensive Player of the Year and Most Outstanding Player of the Year and not be the newcomer, even though he's new to the conference. Now, I get that it's kind of skirting the rule, but was an interesting hypothetical that I think, frankly, might carry some weight. I don't know how much room is in Jamal Shead's trophy case, but let's stretch it. Speaking of Jamal Shead's trophy case, Sporting News All-American team came out, and Jamal Shead highlights it as the starting point guard. RJ Davis is the other guard. He's from North Carolina. Dalton Connect is formerly of Northern Colorado. He is now at Tennessee. Tristan Newton of UConn plays one of the forwards, and Zach Edey of Purdue plays the big man down low. Now, couple things that were interesting. One, that is a fun basketball team to watch play. I'd like to see RJ Davis and Jamal Shead play together, actually. That'd be a really fun backcourt. At like a pro level fun backcourt, right? But the other part that I'll say is that this took me back to Dalton Connect. Dalton Connect used to play at Northern Colorado, and he had a great season last year in Northern Colorado. Averaged almost 17 points per game, et cetera, et cetera. He's having a better season than that at Tennessee this year. Rick Barnes has got that thing rolling. Second sidebar, that school in Austin's got it down bad. If Shaka Smart's got Marquette rolling, Rick Barnes has got Tennessee rolling, Chris Beard's got Ole Miss rolling, and they are where they are. All right, back to Connect. Now, I think Connect is interesting to look at because Houston kept him in the most of check to start the season in 2022-23. Did a great job of locking him up into Northern Colorado. 7 points on 10 shots. And I know he's grown a lot, but he had a really strong year last year too. And Houston was able to kind of shut that down. He's better, but I think Houston's better as well. So it's interesting to see those teams ever match up in the big dance. Perhaps most importantly about the starting five, Shead, RJ Davis, Connect, Newton, and Edey, is that's one per school of each of the top five and five of the six power conferences in basketball, because the Big East counts in basketball, are represented. As of the recording of this podcast, the Big 12, ACC, and SEC players of the year were all also represented on this All-American team. The Big East, again, as of recording this podcast, and the Big Ten had not announced, but Edie won it last year. He's back. Tristan Newton's the best player on the best team in the Big East. I'd imagine he wins it as well. And so what you're seeing there is that like each of these conferences of the top 5 or 6 teams puts forward basically the best player in their best team. And it just so happened this year to fit, right? There weren't 5 centers or anything like that. It just so happened to work. What is interesting to me is Caleb Love won Conference Player of the Year in the American Caleb Love won the ACC, not AAC, the ACC Player of the Year last year at Carolina, right, as a guard, and transferred to Arizona this year and won Pac-12 Player of the Year as a guard. Arizona is ranked 6th in the country on the AP poll and is also ranked very well in nets and all kinds of other coach polls, and right? Caleb Love is notably missing, right? A backlog at guard spots here. Now, from a like macro level, does that fuel the fire for some deep Arizona run? Whew, that could be tough, right? But also, it's interesting that like in a year where the Pac-12 is dissolving, this is their last hurrah. There is not going to be Pac-12, the conference that had Lou Alcindor, that had I don't know, more recently like Jaylen Brown, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Love, right? Bronny James this year. Pac-12 basketball has been a thing to behold. Arizona and all the Aaron Gordons and the successes they've had. Arizona State had the James Hardens of the world come through there as well. Washington has had a ton of talent from Isaiah Thomas, the more recent Isaiah Thomas, and so on. That conference getting broken up. And the Conference Player of the Year can't make the All-American team. Now, I'm not giving him Jamal Shead's spot, but that is interesting. The other thing I'll say is that probably means Caleb is ineligible for, he wouldn't win Most Outstanding Player of the Year in the Naismith or Wooden Awards. Wooden Award and Naismith Award would probably come from one of those guys, Jamal Shead, RJ Davis, Don Connect, Tristan Newton, and Zach Edey. It's not officially the list, but it is the list. And I think it's worth pointing out that means Jamal Shead's probably on the short list. Once upon a time, we did an episode of this podcast where we talked about who's going to get their jersey retired from the Kelvin Sampson era. I said I think it's going to be Marcus, and I think it'll be Jamal. And I think there's arguments for others. I think that conversation 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, that people are like, I don't know what Jamal Shead has done. Like, has he done enough? And I think after winning all the Big 12 awards he could have won, I think. All-American right now, first team All-American, right? If I would vote him for National Player of the Year. I think he cemented it. I don't think this tournament has any bearing on whether or not his jersey gets retired. I think number one is going the rafters. Now, I hear the argument about, well, he needs to do with such and da. I would point out he was a freshman on the Final Four team once upon a time, right? And so, technically he's got that under his belt as well. I think being named to a first team All-American, though, just on, what was that, Tuesday? I think that puts it down. I think that cements it. I think number one is going the rafters. If you want to ever buy Houston Cougar number one jersey, you might need to do it now because I don't think anyone else is ever going to get to wear it again. Now, if you think I'm crazy, think I'm silly, think I've got everything all wrong about anything today, comment down below. Let me know. I can take it, I promise. I promise. Talk to me each and every day at Painsworth512 on all social media platforms. It's every single social media platform at Painsworth512, PAINSWORTH 512. If you'd like to hit subscribe, help us get to the next big marker of 2,500 on YouTube, that'd be awesome. Locked On Coogs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast. Your team, our Coogs, are number one in America Coogs, and our number one Jamal Shead each and every day here at Locked On Coogs. Go Coogs.